The 2024-2025 Pokemon TCG season is well underway, with local events happening all across the world every single weekend. And in my fully unbiased opinion, Control is one of the strongest picks for these local events, just because it has such a balanced matchup spread. There's really nothing that your opponent can flip over that you really feel like, dang, I have no chance of beating this. But it is one of the hardest decks to pilot. It can be very punishing if you do make mistakes, and also the best of one rules can be kind of troublesome sometimes. It's not always easy to finish games in 30 minutes. So in this video, I'm going to break down my current Control list, then I'm going to go over how I would navigate best of one 30-minute formats, and then finally we'll go over each meta matchup, and I'll briefly explain the most efficient way to beat those decks, as well as a tech card that you can potentially include if your local meta is just absolutely infested with that deck. I'm sure at first glance this list looks like an absolute pile. Like, there's no way that this 60 cards works well together. So let me first explain how the heck this deck works. In essence, we are trying to create an advantageous board state with our various disrupting options by either discarding certain cards or knocking out specific attackers. So one of our 4 sweeping options can go basically unchecked by our opponents. Our 4 different sweeping options being Ursaluna, Chi-Yu, Mimikyu, and Ogerpon. The rest of the deck is either just consistency to help us get set up, or it is one of those disrupting cards that help us control our opponent's board in one way or another. Of course, Pidgeot EX enables this entire deck, lets us play this disgusting amount of one-ups. Yeah, this deck would just simply not work without Pidgeots. And now for just some of the more controversial cards. A lot of these cards have been in Control for a long time, but some of these are definitely new, and yeah, let's just talk about it. And so Ursaluna is a massive upgrade to this deck. It is one of our sweepers, one of the most important cards in this deck. Basically, it can knock out specific attackers. It can also tank hits, so there will be situations where we're just trying to create a board state where our opponent cannot hit more than 260 damage, so they cannot knock out Ursaluna, and then they cannot win the game, because every turn we can just use Penny, hit him again with Ursaluna, and eventually we'll take all of our prizes. And now you'll see that there's a baby Luxray in here instead of a more conventional single prize attacker that Control decks have been used to, like a Bravery Charizard. But my philosophy behind playing the baby Luxray is we already have Ursaluna for the late game, so we kind of would like something to shore up the early game a little bit. So we do have that baby Luxray that can swing for 1 energy very early in the game. It can one-shot a lot of annoying single prizers like Chinchino, Archeops, or Monkey Dory. And it's not just a Lugia attack, it has a lot of other application in other matchups. The Wellspring Ogerpon is in here over something like a Mawile that we've seen in the past. It just has so much more HP, so you can trap things that you would never be able to trap with Mawile before. And also do not overlook Torrential Pump as an attack. It is actually very powerful situationally. That's why there's a water energy in the list. Roseanne's backup hasn't always been in these Control lists, but it helps just recover Pokemon energy. Tool card stadiums, it's all very good things that we need to have back a lot of the time. Roxanne has been something that is not usually seen, but in a lot of matchups where we're taking prizes, we want to make sure we're disrupting our opponent, but something like an Iono would give us only 3 cards to work with. So when we're trying to chain very specific combos where we need several cards to make it work, something like an Iono is just not good enough. We have to kind of hope for the best, that we get the cards we want off of it, where off of Roxanne we kind of get the best of both worlds. We can disrupt them, but also maintain a pretty big hand so we can keep our combos going. One of the cards that jumps off the page is just kind of random is Survival Brace, and in matchups where they don't really care about the damage cap, they're going to knock out your Pokemon anyway. It's just nice to have this Survival Brace to guarantee that your Pokemon lives. This is almost always going to be going on Pidgeot, just because we don't want that to get knocked out super early, because our game plans pretty much fall apart if we cannot have Quick Search. But it can situationally be used on other Pokemon, but most often it will be put on Pidgeots. There's a Lost City in this list. This is mainly a Gardevoir attack to get rid of their attackers, but can be situationally used in other matchups just to remove annoying threats that we don't want to deal with multiple times. And the Split of Energy is here just to attack with all of our different stuff. Water for Ogerpon, Reversal for Luxray, Fire for Chi-Yu, and Mist Energy to protect against the likes of Dragapult and Sableye. So now that we got the deck list out of the way, I want to talk about how you should alter your game plan for best of one. And the first thing I want to touch on is just take a calculated risks. Something you may have noticed from playing Control in best of one is you're going to just face people who are just not interested in finishing games with you. They're not going to just actively progress to win the game because they know that our deck really can't do anything until a couple prize cards have been drawn, and sometimes it is detrimental to our overall strategy to just go in and start taking prizes and putting pressure on them. So they will just sit there, they'll have a board full of Pokemon, and they'll basically just wait and dare us to just take a knockout, which is exactly what you should not do. In these situations where like maybe like a Gardevoir or a Zard player is just chilling, I would just rather go in with like a Luxray or a Chi-Yu, because this puts pressure on them, because otherwise really good cards are just going to get discarded over and over again. But also it's not taking knockouts, so it's not potentially locking us out of counter catcher or activating their counter catcher. But it's still putting pressure on them and forcing the game to be advanced. Another thing about taking calculated risks is you really need to be aware of the cards that are in your opponent's deck. If they've been totally locked out of the game and they're just going draw pass, waiting until they can find an Iono to throw all their stuff back in, you could potentially want to go in with like a Luxray or something to pick that Iono out of the hand. As long as it isn't just totally like game losing, like you can still maintain your lock, your Luxray getting potentially knocked out isn't active detriments. That's why it has to be calculated. You gotta make sure your Luxray is not getting knocked out back. But going in with that Fang Snipe, discarding a Iono out of their hands could be really helpful in terms of progressing the game toward a finish. But you would not want to be doing this if you're unaware of just the cards that are in your opponent's deck. It could lead to some indecisiveness with decisions. When you may actually have the game totally locked down, but you're still like trying to think of ways to win the game. So what I would do is go on Limitless and go like the most recent big event and looking at the average card count per list. That way I can have a really good idea of like what I need to be playing around. Like if I'm against Raging Bolt and they have both their switch cards and their Prime Catcher down, I can just Saw block their Radiant Greninja, just go draw Sob, draw Sob, draw Sob, not have to worry about anything else happening. That way we're just not wasting time making unnecessary actions and potentially making it so the game doesn't conclude. The other thing I want to talk about is at the start of the game, it's pretty much universally accepted that both players get a couple extra minutes to just check their deck, figure out what their prize cards are, and I don't really like this in best of one. Of course, checking prizes is very important for a control deck when you have very specific combos that you need and a lot of one-of cards that go into those combos. So if you don't have access to them, that is very bad. So I would just prize check the most important cards for that specific matchup. I would not check all 6 of my prizes. I would look at the Pokemon that I know I would need, the supporters I know I would need, like if it's like Eri Sisters, Cyllene, my boss's orders, of course my penny counts, Iono, Roxanne, and then the items that are just crucial like Counter Catcher, Pal Pad, Forest Seal Stone, but everything else, like I'm not checking my Nest Balls, my Ultra Ball. The point is to just be as efficient as possible. Just make sure the bare essentials are in the deck, and as the game goes along, you can like continue to check for different things as you gain more information. So maybe on your second search of the game, you could count your Nest Ball and Ultra Balls, but don't just take super long on one search, because both players are taking a couple minutes on their first search. That's like 4 minutes of the game that is not spent on playing Pokemon, just checking prizes. So finishing in 30 minutes is already pretty hard, but finishing in 26 minutes is even harder. So yeah, do not fully check your prizes. Just make sure you know the important stuff is in there, but I'm not gonna check everything. Yeah, but if it's best of 3, by all means, check your prizes. Knowing what's in there is very important. The last tip that I have to save time is totally brainless and anyone can do no matter what level of experience you have, and that is to get yourself some TC Evolutions dice and ability markers. That way you can just present the most clean, orderly board, because if you have to spend time clarifying something, then that's time you're spending not playing Pokemon. My pro tip is to get your dice with a different range of damage in all different colors. That way if you pick up a certain color, you know it's going to be a certain range of damage. That way you're not just fumbling around your dice trying to pick up the right amount. And when you check out, if you use code Blitzel10, you can save yourself 10% off your order and also help support my channel, so thank you. And now for the part you've all been waiting for, and that is the matchups. For the sake of keeping this video concise, I'm just going to cover the top 10 most popular decks in formats. I'm going to do very briefly just explaining your kind of plan A, like what your ideal sweeper is in each matchup, as well as a potential backup plan if things aren't going well. If you're looking for a more in-depth look in a lot of the matchups, as well as some things not covered in this video, I do have a Metafy Control Masterclass, and I'll leave it linked in the description below if that's something that interests you. And Editor Blitzel here, this deck does want to go second into every single matchup you want to set up, you want to play the game. Yeah, I forgot to mention that, but yeah, back to the matchups. Starting things off, we have Gardevoir. This is a matchup where I really like Ursaluna, but you also can go Ogerpon. Really, the name of the game is trying to bait out Drifloon and trying to Lost Zone their Drifloon, and then Ursaluna can pretty much sweep from there. They have nothing in their deck that can one-shot you, but also sometimes they will bench multiple Pokemon that can get trapped, and Ogerpon can become a win condition, but I don't like to rely on that out the gate. It's sometimes iffy, especially if they play multiple turns. The Raging Bolt matchup, there's really only one effective sweeper, and that is Mimikyu. The game plan is to shove up Mimikyu right away, try to like slow down their early game, force them to bench their Sandy Shocks. Then you want to Lost Zone their Sandy Shocks with your Pidgeots, and then after that you just be able to wall out with Mimikyu. Big Survival Brace is really important on your Pidgeot right away, just so they can't steamroll you. If they take too many prizes while you're setting up, just totally abandon this Mimikyu plan and try to either win with Ursaluna Loop plus Ionos, hopefully get them to miss a beats, or Retreat Lock can also work, but Mimikyu Lost Zoning their Sandy Shocks is plan A. The Lugia matchup kind of depends on how they're playing Lugia. If they're playing the Chinchino build, really all we have is just chase the Chinchinos with either Baby Luxray, with Pidgeot, with Ursaluna, just trying to keep those off the board, because once those are all gone, they have nothing that can one-hit Ursaluna, and we just be able to loop that and take our remaining prizes. If it is the double Iron Hands build that is not playing any Chinchinos, we'd rather just go after the Archeops and make it hard for them to use multiple Weird Ears. You also can Lost Zone their Weird Ears so they can't Thorton it back and only have one-hit attacker in the whole game. It's another matchup where putting Brace on Bird is super important, just to ensure we have enough quick searches to last ourselves throughout the game. Lost Box is kind of a weird matchup. We're pretty much just trying to take as much as we can with our disruption early game, and then building towards 1 or 2 win conditions later in the game. We'll either be trying to Penny Loop Chi-Yu or Penny Loop Ursaluna. Just kind of depends on the board states. We might not want to take prizes like give them Counter Catcher or Roxanne, or give them a bench spot if they bench lock themselves. So Chi-Yu could be more efficient in those instances, but also using Ursaluna to Lost Zone could be optimal. It just kind of depends on the board states. To making sure you protect your Pidgeys early game with like Manaphy, Bravery Charm, Mist Energy, getting them evolved up, you should be pretty much set. If they do show up Iron Thorns right away, try to feed them an early prize card to activate your counter catchers, and then you can just gust around the Iron Thorns after that. The Dragapult matchup is super grindy. It is kind of a mess of 3 different win conditions. Really, the most exploitable resource they have is they're only playing usually around 7 energy cards. So gusting up Pokemon that have 1 retreat and just forcing them to keep burning energies is super good. Also can use Mimikyu to force retreats, can use Ursaluna to pressure stuff and get rid of energies. My favorite play in the matchup is to use Ogerpon to retreat lock their Pidgeot. So they either have to commit 2 energies to Bird, burn a Kieran or a Turo. Like no matter what they do, it's pretty suboptimal for them. So really it's just trying to use all your different options to grind down their energies and either create a board state where Mimikyu wins, Ogerpon wins, or Ursaluna Loop wins. And pro tip for this matchup, try to have Mist Energy Pidgeot and Mist Energy Sandshrew be the only things on your bench. Just so there's not a bunch of free prizes laying on the board. Next we got Regidrago, and that's either really easy or really hard. Mist Energy Mimikyu does beat them if they do not play any kind of Shred attacker. But obviously we don't know that in a close to accessible environment, so if we just go load Mimikyu, they could just use a Shred, and the game would just be over instantly. So I would set up my board with Mist Energy Mimikyu and Mist Energy Pidgeot with a Brace on it on the bench. That way if they do show the Shred, we're not just totally cooked after that. If they do end up having a Shred attacker, try to use the combination of Baby Luxray, Pidgeot, and Ursaluna to prize trade with the Regidragos, because they're usually not going to bench a ton of things because it's like difficult for them to load up a lot of different attackers. But if they do go a super wide board, Retreat Lock can be an alternative win condition. Just try to gust up their Ogerpons and Sob, and then eventually they'll run out of energies and switches because they don't play too many switches. Next we got Charizard, and that's pretty similar matchup to Dragapult. Definitely on the grindy side. It's kind of the same deal that they don't really have too many energies, so we're gonna just like try to bait out his RDX with an early Luxray or something, then hide behind Mimikyu, force them to retreat, and keep gusting up things that have to retreat, burn their energies. Yeah, eventually we can either just win by Ogerpon locking something, win because they can't get through Mimikyu. All they have is Charmeleon. Unlike the Dragon Ball matchup, I would really do not recommend taking prizes, because then you're making their Radzard cheaper and you're making their Charizard deal more damage. So just try to lean on the combination of Ogerpon and Mimikyu to whittle down all their energies, and only take a knockout if you're getting rid of their last couple energy cards. Next up we got Chen Pao, and this matchup was kind of sketchy before Survival Brace, because they could sort of rush us and make it hard for us to set up. But with Manaphy and Brace in the list, it's pretty easy to set up. There's really two different ways the matchup goes. If they bench Babero, we'd want to go for a retreat lock route, like put down our Sandshrew so they can't Cyllene back Prime Catcher, and they're stuck flipping coins and trying to 3-hit our Ogerpon with Babero. If they do not bench Babero, we just want to use a combination of Baby Luxray and Ursaluna to keep knocking out their Baxcaliburs, Iono them to low hand size, and just really make it hard for them to keep finding Chen Pao knockouts. Miraidon is basically identical to Raging Bolt. Want to shove up Mimikyu right away. They're going to bench Zapdos to deal with Mimikyu. We want to knock out that Zapdos. Lost zoning it is kind of optional. About a third of Miraidon lists are playing Super Rod, so if it's holding you back from taking a knockout, you don't have to get the Lost City. It is optional, but if you can go for it, definitely do it. After the Zapdos has been Lost City, they have no answer to Mist Energy Mimikyu, and that would just win you the game. Just like Raging Bolt, if you allow too many prizes while you're setting up, try to win with either an Ursaluna sweep or a retreat lock game plan. Ursaluna sweeping is a lot more viable in this matchup because all they have to one-hit us is Raichu. Also, yeah, Brace on Bird's pretty good, so they don't just blow it up turn 2. And finally, we got Snorlax Stall, and this is the most free matchup for bird control. We just open the game up with some kind of pressure with either Chi-Yu or Luxray, and the only way that they have to match our pressure is going in with their own Chi-Yu, but then we can use Pidgeot to knock it out and send it to the Lost Zone, and the game's pretty much over. They can't put any more pressure on us. We have infinite resources thanks to Cyllene. And yeah, that's that. The only way you sort of variate from this game plan is if they bench their own Sandshrew, you'd want to knock that out before you knocked out their Chi-Yu, just in case they could counter catcher, trap one of our bench Pokemon, because we have a limited amount of pennies. But yeah, it's really tough for them to get through Lost City on their Chi-Yu. They pretty much just lose instantly. I made this graphic here with all your preferred sweepers in all the meta matchups, and I'll put it in the resources channel in my Discord, linked in the description below. Yeah, and then quickly some tech cards you could play if your local meta was filled up with one of these certain decks. I currently have the Roxanne and Roseanne as cards that are sort of on the bubble, so if you wanted to cut something for one of those tech cards, I would start there. I try to keep these tech cards as versatile as possible, just so we're not playing goofy things like Farigiraf in our deck. Roxanne is kind of my tech of choice for the Guardy matchup. It's just nice to have that late game draw when you need to disrupt them, but you also need to find your combos. You also could consider something like canceling Cologne to get around Fluttermane, but I like Roxanne the most. Professor Turo is good in the Raging Bolt matchup. It just helps you be able to keep a cleaner board against them, like when you're trying to Mimikyu wall. You don't even have to worry about them gusting Bird, because you can just pick it up, so it's just less prize you can potentially have in the late game. Professor Turo or Enhanced Hammer for the Lugia matchup. It just depends on the version. If you're seeing a lot of the Chinchino version, I would play Enhanced Hammer, just to knock off the gift energies, combine it with an Iono. There's a lot of the double hands build. You could play Professor Turo and even lean into a Mimikyu strat where you try to Ursaluna knock out both other Archeops and then Turo up your Pidgeot and win with Mimikyu. For Lost Box, I'd Canceling Cologne just to get around the Iron Thorns, be able to play the game. You also could consider Fluttermane, but I really like Cologne more versatile. For the Dragon Ball matchup, second Mist Energy is super important. Lets you put it on Sandshrew, just deny their Pal Pad, and you're kind of cooking. Second Mist also good against Drago for that kind of same reason. Just so you can have one on Mimikyu, have one on Pidgeot, and just have, pretty safe board. I just kind of struggled to think of something for Charizard, because Artie's a super favorite matchup, but you could go Claw for even a TM Devo or Bouffalont, but matchup's super favored, so I wouldn't probably recommend teching for Zard. Kind of the same thing for Chen Pao, but Devo kind of exists. But I will note, if you're going to play Devo, I would not cut the Roseanne then, because kind of the whole point is to be able to Roseanne on multiple Devos in a game. Turo in Miraidon, kind of the same thing as Raging Bolt, just so you can pick up your Pidgeot, not have to worry about having quite as clean of a board. And Snorlax is so ridiculously free, you do not need to tech for it. So that's going to do it for the video today. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM on either Discord or Twitter. Yeah, make sure you pick up those TC Evolutions dice. Use code Blitzel10. I really appreciate y'all. And yeah, best of luck at your League Cups.